Welcome to Shatter.
Support the channel by liking, commenting, and subscribing. I promise even more interesting stories. She said it without blinking, like she was reading a line from a script she'd rehearsed 100 times in her head. Her tone wasn't angry. It was worse. It was indifferent. The kind of cold detachment that tells you she stopped seeing you as a man a long time ago. Maybe even stopped seeing you at all. Who needs intimacy anyway? She muttered, her eyes never leaving the screen of her phone. I'm fine without it. She didn't look up. Didn't realize that sentence was the last one I'd ever need. For 3 full seconds, I didn't move. Just stood there in our kitchen, holding a mug I suddenly didn't need, feeling the heat seep through the ceramic into my fingers like it was trying to burn some reaction into me. But I didn't give her one. No raised voice. No slammed doors. No emotional monologue begging for answers she wouldn't give. I just nodded once. Quiet. Final. And walked out of the room. She thought I was retreating. But I wasn't retreating. I was exiting. That night, we lay in the same bed, back to back, like strangers forced to share space. I stared at the ceiling, not angry, not hurt, just done. Something inside me had shut off. A switch flipped in a room I didn't know existed. I wasn't thinking about what she said. I was thinking about all the things that came before it. The signs I ignored. The excuses I made. The way she stopped laughing at my jokes. The way she brushed off my touch like static. And the worst part? I'd accepted it. For months. But not anymore. That one sentence, "Who needs intimacy?" was the end of her performance. The curtain dropped, and I finally saw the stage for what it was. Empty. I got out of bed before the sun came up. Quietly. No alarm. No routine morning coffee for her like I used to make. No quick goodbye kiss on the forehead before I left for work. Just silence. And that silence wasn't her punishment. It was my freedom. I sat in my car with the engine off and just breathed. For the first time in months, maybe longer, I wasn't planning how to fix things. I wasn't making excuses for her distance. I wasn't fantasizing about the old days or wondering when she'd come back to me emotionally. Because she wouldn't. And now I didn't need her to. I realized something in that moment. She wasn't withholding intimacy to punish me. She was doing it because she'd already checked out. She wanted me to adapt to the emotional famine she created, to thank her for crumbs and pretend they were meals. But I was done starving. That day, I stopped texting her during lunch. Stopped asking about her deadlines, her meetings, her mood. I stopped being her emotional support system. I became polite, distant, professional, and she didn't notice. Not yet, but she would. Because a woman like her always notices when the orbit she built around herself stops spinning. When the man she thought was too loyal to leave starts disappearing without a word. Let her scroll. Let her smirk. Let her say she didn't need intimacy. Because by the time she realized she did, I'd be long gone. She didn't notice the shift on day one. Of course she didn't. She was too busy living in the version of reality where I still revolved around her. Still cared enough to ask if she wanted anything from the store. Still reached for her hand in the middle of a movie. Still paid attention when she walked into a room. But I had stopped. Quietly. Strategically. At breakfast, I sat across from her, eating oatmeal in silence. No eye contact. No question about how she slept. No casual smile to fill the void between us. She scrolled through her phone with one hand, sipped her coffee with the other, and mumbled something about work being stressful. I nodded once. That was it. She glanced up like she expected more. A follow-up question. A comforting line. But I gave her nothing. No reaction. Just a man reading the news like she wasn't even there. That night, I came home later than usual. No explanation. No fake excuse. No effort. She was on the couch in one of those robes she used to wear early in our relationship, the kind meant to hint at something without saying it. Her hair was done. Makeup subtle but intentional. There was a glass of wine on the table. The kind of scene she used to set when she wanted attention, but only on her terms. "You're late," she said, not looking away from the TV. "Didn't realize we were on a schedule," I replied, setting my keys down like I was answering a stranger. Her eyes flicked up, just for a second. She was measuring me, calculating whether this was mood or message. But I didn't look back. I walked to the kitchen, cleaned up the mess she left behind. Takeout containers. Empty glass. No sigh. No comment. No guilt. Just action. She stood in the doorway and watched. "You okay?" she asked. "Better than I've been in a long time." I meant it. Every syllable. She didn't respond. Just stared at me for a beat too long. then went back to her wine like nothing happened. But I saw it. The confusion, the flicker of discomfort. That feeling when you realize a role you controlled is being rewritten without your input. For the next few days, I became a ghost with structure. I was present, but detached. Cordial, but cold. I responded when spoken to but never initiated. I slept on my side of the bed without moving once. When she reached for me in the middle of the night out of habit, her hand met empty air. She started dressing nicer around the house. Light perfume in the evenings. Casual check-ins like, "What are you up to tomorrow?" or "Want to do something this weekend?" I answered in short, factual phrases. She was testing the waters. But I wasn't dipping my toes in anymore. I was already drying off on the shore, halfway gone. Then came the subtle reclaims. I logged into our shared accounts and started pruning. Streaming services, gone. Subscriptions I knew she liked, but never paid for, canceled. I adjusted my direct deposit to route a portion into a private account she didn't know existed. Just small shifts, like moving furniture an inch a day until the whole room feels unfamiliar. That Friday, the Netflix login failed. She called out from the living room. "Something's wrong with the account." I didn't respond. Just continued brushing my teeth in the bathroom like I hadn't heard. She came to the doorway. I could see the hesitation. "You gonna fix it?" I looked at her through the mirror. Calm. Measured. No rush. She stared at me, waiting for the man who used to jump to solve things. But I wasn't him anymore. She didn't know it yet, but the slow withdrawal had already begun. I wasn't punishing her. I wasn't playing games. I was preparing. Preparing for a life that didn't include explaining myself to someone who thought silence was an answer and distance was currency. She had no idea the void she once weaponized would become the space where I finally found peace. And I was just getting started. The real beauty of silence is how it starts as nothing and then becomes everything. By the end of the first week, I had disappeared in plain sight. Still in the house, still in the routines, still making the coffee in the morning, but just for me. Still folding laundry, but not hers. Still taking care of things, but only the ones that served me. And she noticed. It began with her watching me more closely, as if she was trying to figure out what had changed. Why the man who once bent over backward to earn a single smile now walked past her without flinching. Why my presence felt like absence. Why the air between us, once heavy with unspoken tension, had turned light, too light. She came home one night with groceries she never used to buy. Artisan pasta, wine she knew I liked, the kind of sauce we used to cook together on Friday nights before everything turned robotic. I watched her unpack the bags, stacking items like she was building a bridge back to me. She didn't offer dinner. She waited for me to speak first. I didn't. Instead, I opened the fridge, pulled out leftovers, and ate alone at the counter. She hovered near the sink, pretending to wash a dish that didn't need washing. I could feel her watching, hoping I'd crack, that I'd ask what was wrong or invite her in. But she wasn't invited anymore. She lingered behind me like a ghost of her former self, but I didn't turn around. The next morning, she reached for my hand as I poured my coffee. Just a light touch on the wrist. An instinct. Muscle memory. I pulled away like I hadn't even noticed. Not out of cruelty. Out of completion. My silence wasn't revenge, it was a declaration. I was finished explaining my worth to someone who treated it like an inconvenience. That weekend, I left the house early. No plans. No explanation. Just walked out the door like I had somewhere better to be. Because honestly, I did. Anywhere felt better than that house that had become a museum of what we used to be. I drove with the windows down. No destination. Just motion. Movement, even without direction, was still better than sitting in the rot of what she'd built. She texted me around noon. "Everything okay?" I read it once. Put the phone down. No reply. She followed up hours later with a picture of our dog lying on the couch. A half-hearted caption, "He misses you." Translation, "I miss the version of you who used to chase me." I didn't respond. That night, she was waiting when I walked in. Candles lit. A bottle of wine open. That same robe again, now paired with lipstick she hadn't worn in months. She looked good. Not for me. For the version of me she assumed still existed. The one who'd melt at the gesture, fall back into place, forgive without conversation. "You're home late," she said, softer this time. I nodded. Wasn't in a rush. She tried to keep her smile, but it flickered. The silence that followed wasn't peaceful. It was surgical. She poured a second glass, slid it across the table like a peace offering. I didn't touch it. I sat down, ate what I brought with me, and said nothing. She watched me, trying to read the man she once held the script to. But the lines had changed. The actor had changed. The entire scene was different. She made a comment about intimacy, half joking, half hoping. I let it hang in the air like smoke. Didn't react. Didn't blink. And that's when I saw it. The first crack. The panic behind her eyes, well masked but present. The realization that the void she thought she could control was now staring back at her, and it was hollow, hungry, and irreversible. That night, she came to bed in silence, laid closer than usual. I didn't move, didn't acknowledge her presence. And for the first time since this all began, I felt her flinch. Not because I touched her, but because I didn't. She turned away. I stared at the ceiling, breathing easy. Let her wonder. Let her spiral. She created the silence. Now she could drown in it. There's a difference between being quiet and being gone. She was only just beginning to understand that. The next few days were a study in subtle collapse. She kept trying carefully, strategically. She'd initiate conversation over dinner like we still had a rhythm. Bring up old memories, shared vacations, and side jokes she thought might thaw whatever wall she felt rising between us. But I had stopped playing her nostalgia game. She asked if I remembered the night we stayed up until 2 a.m. in San Diego, walking barefoot on the beach, eating ice cream from the hotel lobby. I nodded once. Then I went back to my emails. She mentioned how she missed cooking together, that we hadn't done it in a while. I told her I'd already eaten. That night, she left the dishes in the sink, something she never did. I noticed, but didn't say a word. I just loaded mine, wiped the counter, and walked away. Let her feel the mess. Let her live in what she used to ignore. By Thursday, her movements were sharper, more anxious. She paced more, checked her phone more. She started asking where I was going when I left the house. A question she used to ask out of politeness. Now it came with tension behind it. Curiosity edged with fear. Out, I said. For how long? No idea. The words weren't harsh, just factual. But they landed like cuts. That night, I came home around 10. She was sitting on the couch with the lights low, laptop open, TV playing a show she wasn't watching. She looked up when I came in, hopeful. I walked past her like she wasn't part of the scene. In the morning, she tried touch again. A brush on the back of my shoulder as I poured cereal. Her fingers paused, lingered. I stepped to the side like I was reaching for a spoon. Not dramatic. Just detached. She blinked, said nothing, and sat at the table with her phone like always. But this time, she didn't scroll. She just stared at the screen, unmoving. She was feeling it now. The same emptiness I'd felt for months. The difference? I'd already accepted it. She was just starting to taste it, and it was bitter. That weekend, I went to the gym mid-afternoon. She texted while I was gone. Want to go grab dinner tonight? Just us? I read it. Didn't respond. She followed up an hour later, made reservations anyway. Hope you'll come. I didn't. I got home at 9. She was dressed, makeup still fresh, heels kicked off near the door. The table was set. 2 plates. Candles. Soft music from the speaker. A scene she'd once perfected years ago when it meant something. Now it looked staged. Desperate. She stood up when I walked in. Opened her mouth to speak. I walked past her. Upstairs. 10 minutes later, I heard her blow out the candles. The next morning, she tried a different tactic. Warmth. Small talk. Asking about my gym routine. Noticed my new shirt. Commented on how I seemed more energized lately. I thanked her. Then left the house again. When I returned that evening, she was in the bathroom, door half shut. She didn't hear me come in. I caught a glimpse of her in the mirror, face bare, eyes puffy. She looked at herself like she didn't recognize the woman staring back. She shouldn't. She had built her image around control. Around being the one who kept affection locked behind emotional negotiations. Around being the woman who decided when love was convenient. Now, love wasn't on the table. I wasn't waiting anymore. I had removed her from the equation. And when someone's world is built around your attention, your absence becomes a demolition. I wasn't cruel. I was quiet. And in that silence, her empire started to fall. Piece by piece. Just the way she built it. You don't always notice when something ends. Sometimes it dies slowly, and by the time you see it, it's already cold. That week, I stopped leaving traces. No more empty coffee cups left in the sink. No gym bag tossed by the door. No cologne lingering in the hallway. I didn't vanish. I just made myself untrackable. I still left the house. Still came back. Still responded when spoken to. but everything I did became untethered from her world. She couldn't read me anymore, couldn't predict my patterns, couldn't hold on to a version of me that no longer existed. And that's when the panic truly began. It started small. A nervous laugh that didn't match the conversation. A question asked twice in the same hour. She began noticing my absence, even when I stood 5 feet away. I saw it in her eyes, the search for signs, for cracks, for any opening that might let her in. But I'd sealed every door. She left a note on the kitchen counter one morning. Just a sticky yellow square, like something out of a high school locker. Dinner tonight? Just us. No distractions. I didn't reply. I didn't throw it away either. I left it exactly where it was. By the time I got home that evening, it was gone. So was she. Dinner was on the stove, covered warm. A small gesture dressed up as effort. But it didn't land. I ate alone again, cleaned up, and went to bed early. The next day, she broke routine. She texted me during work hours. 3 times. First, hope your morning's okay. Then, you free tonight? Maybe a walk. Finally, we need to talk soon. Please. I didn't respond. Not because I wanted to punish her. Not because I needed control. But because I had nothing left to give. I wasn't holding out to be chased. I wasn't testing her. I had simply let go. And once a man lets go, he doesn't grab back. That night, I changed all my passwords. Bank accounts. Cloud storage. Email. I rerouted everything through a private system. I'd already funneled my income into a solo account 2 weeks earlier. She hadn't noticed yet. But she would. Soon. I booked a storage unit on the edge of town. Small. Unassuming. I didn't move out. Not officially. But piece by piece, my life began to shift there. Documents. Keepsakes. The watch my father left me. My passport. My laptop. I took the old me out of her house and stored him somewhere she couldn't reach. Saturday morning, I left the house early. I didn't tell her where I was going. I drove 2 hours south to an old hiking trail I hadn't walked in years. No signal. No distractions. Just silence. Real silence. Not the kind between 2 people pretending they still belong in the same story. When I came home, she was waiting. She stood in the entryway like a scene she'd rehearsed. Hair brushed. Soft sweater. No makeup, but carefully casual. She looked like she wanted to cry, but wouldn't. Not yet. She needed permission for that. She didn't have it. She asked where I'd been. I told her I'd gone out. She waited for more. There was no more. She asked if we could talk. I told her not tonight. Her breath hitched, but she covered it with a nod. That night, she sat beside me on the couch, closer than usual. I didn't move away, but I didn't lean in either. We watched the same screen, but we weren't watching together. At one point, she rested her head lightly on my shoulder. I didn't react. Minutes later, she pulled away. That was the moment. The first time she felt the full weight of what it meant to lose me. Not just my affection, not just my attention, but my presence. I was still in the room, but she couldn't reach me. And that was something she never saw coming. It started with her sister. A simple message. Hey, is everything okay with you too? She seems off lately. I stared at the screen, thumb hovering over the reply button. Then I locked the phone and slid it into my pocket. Let them wonder. Let them talk. I wasn't going to be the one explaining anymore. Because the truth? She'd already started leaking. Not tears, reputation. Image. She'd spent years curating this version of herself that looked good in public, that made it seem like everything at home was functional, even fulfilling. But when a man like me goes quiet, people notice. It wasn't her coldness that got their attention, it was my absence. An absence, when consistent enough, starts asking questions louder than any confrontation. The next signal came from our mutual friend, Erin. She texted me out of nowhere. We should catch up sometime. It's been a while. I hadn't spoken to Erin in over a year. She used to be her friend more than mine. But I knew exactly why she was reaching out now. Someone was unraveling. And it wasn't me. That week, she began trying harder in strange ways. Cleaning more. Lighting candles at night. Wearing the perfume she knew used to stop me in my tracks. She played the old soundtrack of who she used to be, hoping I'd sing along. But I didn't recognize the lyrics anymore. She started mentioning places we used to go. We should try that sushi place again, she'd say. Or, remember that jazz bar you liked? We haven't been in ages. I nodded. Made no plans. Let her sit in the echo of her own performance. One evening, I walked in and heard her voice from the living room. She was on speakerphone, talking to a friend. She didn't know I was home. And what I heard, It was pure damage control. I don't know what's wrong with him, she said. He's been distant. Moody. I think he's going through something. I'm trying to be supportive, but he just shuts me out. That's when it hit me. She was preparing her version of the story, laying the groundwork, framing the narrative. She wasn't trying to fix us. She was trying to protect her image. I stood silently in the hallway, listening, letting the weight of her words settle into my spine. Not because they hurt, but because they confirmed what I already knew. She wasn't sorry. She was scared. And fear, for people like her, doesn't look like apology. It looks like manipulation dressed as concern. The next morning, I removed the last shared calendar app from my phone. No more synced schedules. No more birthday reminders for her side of the family. No more meal planning or grocery coordination. If she wanted independence, she had it. She asked that day if I'd RSVP'd to her cousin's wedding. I said I hadn't. She looked at me like I was broken. You always handle that stuff. Not anymore. She started forgetting things. Leaving lights on. Bills unpaid. The small things I used to fix without a word. I let them pile up. Let her feel the friction of what it really meant to be alone, while still in the same house. And then came the moment I didn't expect. Her coworker messaged me. Nothing dramatic. Just a simple, vague line. Hope everything's okay. Just checking in. I didn't reply. But the implication was clear. She'd been talking. Maybe not about me directly, but about the shift. About the space. About how the man she used to control had stopped responding to her cues. She hadn't realized yet, but she was the only one performing now. The audience had turned to me, and I wasn't saying a word. Her influence, her hold, her version of control, it was bleeding out in slow motion. Through gossip, through questions, through the growing awareness that something had cracked. Not loudly, not dramatically, but permanently. And now, she had to live with it. Not because I left, but because I stopped showing up. The thing about power is, when someone loses it, they rarely notice right away. It slips, inch by inch, quietly. And then one day, they reach for it and realize their hands empty. That's where she was now. She started asking questions with sharper edges. Not out of care, but panic. Where I'd been. Who I was with. Why I wasn't home by 7. Why my gym bag didn't smell like sweat. Whether I was seeing someone. I never lied. I just didn't give her anything. She'd grown used to emotional leverage. The kind where she'd pull back, and I'd chase. With questions. With gifts. With apologies for crimes I hadn't committed. That game was dead now. And without my part in it, her strategy was exposed. She began pushing. Harder. She cooked my favorite meal on a Wednesday. Chicken marsala, garlic mashed potatoes, steamed broccoli with lemon zest, exactly how I liked it 2 years ago. I came home, smelled it, said thanks, then made myself a sandwich. She watched me eat it in silence. Fork untouched. Candle flickering between us like a dying signal. I didn't acknowledge the performance. Because it wasn't for me. It was for the version of me that used to respond. He wasn't home anymore. She stopped pretending after that. The next night, she confronted me. Not with yelling, but with clipped control. Her voice too calm. Her words too measured. She said she was worried. That I was detaching. I told her I wasn't detaching. I was done. She blinked. As if the words short-circuited her logic. She said relationships take work. That we'd been through worse. That she was trying. I didn't argue. Just stood up from the table, took my plate, rinsed it, and walked away. She followed me halfway down the hall, voice rising, not with volume, but urgency. She wanted a reaction. An explosion. Something to give her leverage again. But I gave her silence. That was the difference between then and now. Back then, I needed her to see me. Now, I needed her gone. She tried something new after that intimacy. A nightgown I hadn't seen in years. Makeup done before bed. Perfume, subtle but deliberate. She lay in bed early, lights dim, eyes open as I walked into the room. I didn't pause. I undressed in silence. Slid under the covers. Back turned. She shifted closer. I didn't move. Her hand touched my back. Soft. Familiar. I flinched, barely. Just enough. Then I pulled the blanket tighter around me and said nothing. She didn't try again. For the next few days, she was quieter. Not from peace, but from confusion. The kind that sets in when someone realizes their usual weapons no longer work. When they realize the fortress they built around their ego is being dismantled, brick by brick, by a man who won't raise his voice, won't slam a door, won't explain himself. She called her sister. I heard the call from the other room. She cried. Said I was a different person. Said I was checking out. Said she didn't know what changed. I almost laughed. What changed? I finally saw her clearly. I finally stopped blaming stress, work, hormones, phases. I stopped giving the benefit of the doubt to someone who weaponized indifference. And now, she was looking in every direction but the mirror. The house started to change around her. Her favorite blanket? Gone from the couch. My hoodie she used to wear? Packed away. Fridge filled with meals for one. Bathroom counter cleared of anything that wasn't mine. Subtle. Surgical. Final. She asked if I wanted to go away for the weekend. Try to reconnect. Said she found a cabin. Quiet. Private. I told her I had plans. She didn't ask what they were. Because she already knew. She wasn't invited. She wasn't needed. She was no longer the center of anything. And that, more than anything, broke her. Not my words. Not my actions. My distance. It was colder than anger. Quieter than resentment. It was a door she couldn't unlock. And I had thrown away the key. The moment her image cracked in front of someone else, it was over. Until then, she still believed she had control. She still thought she could fix it behind closed doors. That if she just dialed up the right combination of nostalgia, guilt, and skin, she could pull me back in. But the house wasn't the only place where the silence was spreading. That Saturday, we attended a dinner party. A friend's birthday. Something small. Just 8 people, wine, soft music, curated conversation. I didn't want to go. But I did. I wanted her to see what it looked like when I stopped protecting her in public the way I used to in private. We arrived together, but not really. She tried to touch my arm in the driveway. I stepped forward before she made contact. Inside, she introduced me to someone new with a smile I didn't return. She made a joke at the table about how I'd been living at the gym lately, and I didn't laugh. I just looked at her. Steady. Unmoved. That was the first time someone else noticed. Our friend Karen tilted her head and asked, "You two okay?" Her voice was light, but the weight behind it landed squarely in the center of the room. She hesitated. Said we were just navigating a busy season. Karen didn't buy it. No one did. And for the first time, she looked like she knew that. Later that evening, I stepped out to take a call. It wasn't urgent. It wasn't work. It was a friend. A woman. Someone I hadn't seen in years who had recently reconnected with me through mutual circles. We talked a few times. Just casual. Just human. But that night, the call lasted 12 minutes. Long enough. When I stepped back inside, she was waiting by the coat rack. I could see it on her face, tight jaw, wide eyes, breath short. She didn't say anything, not then. But she didn't need to. The panic had arrived. When we got home, she didn't even try subtlety. She asked who I was talking to. I told her, a friend. She asked if I was seeing someone. I didn't answer. She followed me into the kitchen, voice rising not with anger, but disbelief. She said she deserved honesty. That if I was done, I should say it. That if there was someone else, I should admit it. I poured a glass of water, took a sip, then walked away. That was my answer. She didn't sleep in our bed that night. She stayed downstairs, lights off, phone glowing in the dark. I passed by in silence. Didn't ask if she was okay. Didn't offer a blanket. Just kept walking. The next morning, she posted a quote on her story. One of those vague, performative things about betrayal and growth. Something like, "It's always the quiet ones who cut the deepest," with a black heart emoji. That same afternoon, her cousin texted me. "You guys fighting?" I left it on read. She was unraveling now, not just at home, but online. Through whispers. Through stories. Through the slow, public decay of the version of our life she used to sell to others. She tried one more play that evening. Dinner again. Homemade. Table set. Her phone put away for once. She sat down across from me and said we needed to talk. I let her speak. She apologized. For everything. She said she'd been selfish. That she took me for granted. That she was willing to do the work, if I was. I nodded. Told her I appreciated her words. Then I cleared my plate. Washed it. Went upstairs. No fight. No rejection. Just a closed chapter. She cried that night. Quietly. Thought I didn't hear. I did. But I didn't turn toward the sound. She wasn't weeping for me. She was grieving the version of herself that no longer had control. The woman she used to be in my eyes. The pedestal she built and watched herself fall from slow, jagged, and in silence. And I let her fall. Not because I hated her, but because I was done holding the rope. It happened on a Tuesday. Not a special day. Not an anniversary. Not a moment marked by anything significant. Just a plain, gray Tuesday, the kind people forget. But not her. She'd remember it forever. Because that was the day she broke. It began in the kitchen. I'd come home late, not on purpose. I wasn't hiding anything. I'd been with a friend, a new contact from a business circle, someone who made conversations feel alive again. Nothing romantic. Not yet. But full of something she hadn't offered me in years. Respect. I walked through the door. Quiet. Unrushed. She was sitting at the table, dressed like she hadn't moved all day. I sunken, hair loose, phone face down in front of her. She didn't look at me. Not at first. I poured a glass of water, opened the fridge, closed it again. That's when she spoke. Her voice wasn't angry. It wasn't sad. It was hollow. She said she knew. Said she saw the way I looked at my phone lately. Said she could feel it in the way I moved through the house like it was already empty. I said nothing. She stood up, walked toward me slowly. Said she didn't deserve this. That I owed her at least an explanation. I turned, looked her in the eye, and said the sentence that ended it all. You made the rules. I just stopped playing. She blinked. Once. Twice. Then something in her snapped. The quiet mask cracked open and chaos poured out. Her voice climbed, her body shook, hands clenching at the air like she was trying to catch something already gone. She said she gave me everything. That I was cold. That I changed. She yelled. Accused. Cried. Paced the floor like it could offer her a script she'd lost. But I just stood there. Still. Calm. Watching a storm that couldn't touch me anymore. There's a silence that feels heavy, and then there's the silence that feels final. This was the second one. She asked if there was someone else. I didn't answer. She begged to know if I hated her. I didn't reply. She asked if we could fix this. I walked past her. Not fast. Not dramatic. Just steady. Upstairs, I opened the drawer where I kept the folder. The one I prepared weeks ago. Documents. Receipts. A letter of separation, drafted and signed. Keys removed from the ring. Passwords changed. The final pieces in place. I came back down. Set the folder on the table. She looked at it like it was a coffin. She didn't speak. Didn't move. Just stared. I said, everything you need is in there. I'll be gone in the morning. Then I walked out of the room. She didn't follow. She knew. She didn't sleep that night. I heard her pacing. Heard the occasional sob, the gasp when she realized how quiet the house had become. Not just in sound, but in presence. I slept better than I had in months. In the morning, I showered. Dressed. Took only what I needed. She was on the couch. Curled up in the blanket I used to throw over her when she fell asleep watching TV. Eyes swollen. Phone on the floor beside her. She didn't look up. I didn't say goodbye. Didn't close the door loudly. Didn't leave a note. Just stepped out into the morning light like a man who had finally learned the value of peace. And as I pulled away, I thought about the sound of her voice the night before. Not the volume, but the desperation. That's what silence does to people who've always relied on noise to control others. It turns their words into echoes, and their power into dust. There's no music at the end. No thunder. No final scream. Just stillness. And in that stillness, clarity. 2 months passed. Not quickly. Not slowly. Just evenly. Like time was finally moving on my terms. I didn't move far. Just far enough. Different neighborhood. Smaller place. Fewer walls, more light. No traces of her. No ghosts in the paint. Just space, and the kind of quiet I used to pray for in the last years of our marriage. I changed everything. Morning routines. Routes to work. My number. My gym. My wardrobe. I stopped following her online. Not out of spite, out of discipline. I didn't want to see the version of her curated for sympathy. The tragic heroine trying to rewrite the ending. Let her have her stage. Let the applause come from people who didn't know the real script. I'd already left the theater. People asked questions. Friends. Coworkers. Her relatives who thought they were owed an explanation. I gave them all the same answer. It didn't work out. Nothing more. Let them fill in the blanks. Let her deal with the noise. I wasn't available for edits. I picked up old hobbies. Photography. Hiking. Things I'd put down to make space for someone who never made space for me. I started sleeping through the night again, deep, uninterrupted, dreamless. A kind of rest that doesn't come from comfort, but from absence. The absence of needing to be someone else for someone who never saw me anyway. One afternoon, I ran into her. Grocery store. She looked smaller. Not physically, just diminished. The light in her eyes flickered when she saw me. She smiled, but it didn't reach her face. She said my name like a question, like she wasn't sure if she still had the right. I nodded once. She asked how I was. I said, I'm good. She waited for more. There was no more. She mentioned that she was trying to work on herself, that she'd learned a lot. I said I hoped so. Then I picked up my bag, turned, and walked away. No grudge. No hate. Just the peace that comes when a storm passes and you're still standing stronger, drier, and with better instincts. That night, I deleted her number for the last time. I'd saved it under a different name, just in case. Not because I wanted her back, but because part of me didn't trust that I wouldn't miss the sound of her falling. But I didn't. There was no satisfaction in her collapse. Only distance. And freedom. The kind of freedom that tastes different when you've earned it through silence. People think strength is loud, that it shows up with fists and fire and final words. But real strength? It's a man who doesn't shout, doesn't explain, doesn't chase, just disappears while standing right in front of you. And when he leaves, he doesn't slam the door. He just never opens it again. Because some women don't deserve a goodbye. Only an absence they can't fill. And in that silence, they finally hear everything. You wanted silence. Here it is. And now it's only yours. Been through it? When they crossed a line and you made sure they felt it.